Hi, and welcome to Empowerment Unleashed Now. I'm Michelle Jones,
I'm Scott Collins.
blowing some smoke, aren't you, my friend? In Capricorn season, you're feeling your oats already.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome. So, this is Scott's season. Everybody thinks of it as Christmas and, Festival of Lights, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, all those good things. But for Scott, tis the season of Scott, my bro, who is a Capricorn. So it's going to be interesting today because Michelle's kind of swimming with the big fishies. Scott is somebody who knows a lot more about astrology than I do. And we're going to have a wonderful guest today who is near and dear to our hearts, kind of like my astrological papa. Um, Tom Parsons. And he's going to talk to us about some super deep dive that we're taking in a good way. It's the ascension dive. As Pluto is now fully in Aquarius for the next 20 to 21 years, depending upon who you talk to and what you follow. So, all right, bro, I'm going to bust it because we just came out of like Sag and here we are in Cap. And this has been this incredible week for a myriad of reasons. But a really cool thing that I heard is that a fourth and fifth pyramid has been discovered in Egypt.
Mhm.
Had you heard that?
No, I'm not surprised.
Okay. So, okay, you're not surprised.
Well, I mean, with the Pluto transit into Aquarius, I think that's probably, I wouldn't say the tip of the iceberg, the tip of the pyramid that of things that were going to start being discovered.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it really, I was thinking of a theme for Capricorn, as we enter, from empowerment, right? Unleash now. From that standpoint of how we unleash our own personal empowerment, tis the season. In this season, I think that self governance is the Capricorn theme. I think that before we cleared our karma, it was self discipline. Just like when you talk about work, and I think of it as opportunities now, right? Because like we've elevated. This is the you might not even know what this feels like because this is the first time that Pluto hasn't been on top of your Capricorn in 15 years.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. So, like, the fun, playful Capricorn is going to get to come out now.
Yeah, I'm already seeing the difference between, Capricorn is often associated with words like authority and power, things like that. But, you know, the difference between power and empowerment, and the difference between authority on others or inner authority is what I'm seeing the difference of now. And that's like the two shades of Capricorn. Um, when it's coming from an inside out perspective, empowerment is a
Yes.
huge, you know, asset on the ascension process. Trying to control or power outside in, looking for that from others for yourself, or even worse, like domineering it onto others is not the healthy state of authority or control.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know that it's coincidence that it's like a lot of that's really dawning on me right on the first 0 and 1st degree days of Capricorn season. But I'm already sensing all that. Yeah, and maybe it's Pluto moving out of it.
You know, I yeah, I it's big moving out, right? Like you said, we've renovated our belief systems about structures that have existed like for a period of time for the last minute in the collective as well as in the personal. I also think that self-governance is a new concept. Like to be talking about on an individual level. And if we as Americans, right, are saying that that's new for us, and we live in a country, believe it or not, I think still has the most freedoms of any nation in the world. We might have as many regulations and laws, which, God willing, we're going to have Pluto take care of that in Aquarius as well and transform and destroy a lot of those. But self governance has been something that we unfortunately have relinquished at a governmental level to others because we trusted, right? We trusted representation. Um, there are things now that representatively we have to be speaking to the people representing us directly. The power has collapsed. It's come to the people. And
Interesting you
it's
say that because I believe the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was during the American Revolutionary.
uh-huh, and the French Revolutionary War.
So, yeah, on a collective scale, a mass scale, I think you're right on the pulse point there. I feel like one difference, the major difference in this transit, it's more about the inner revolution now. I truly do believe that. So, like self governance, sovereignty, words
Mhm,
like that, and realizing self love is not a form of narcissism or something like that, that like is actually
mhm,
the universe wants you to do is glow from the inside out with your own uniqueness and your own um, self preservation daily, like your own self
mhm,
creativity, everything.
mhm.
So that's it's obviously going to be a collective experience, but I think like the true Aquarian revolution, so that word's so synonymous with Aquarius, is going to be the inner revolution this time around.
Completely. I think that the accountability and the responsibility that we can hold from within ourselves now, where we actually are starting to tap into our authentic self and holding ourselves to a standard of expression that kind of gives us the authority just because we are who we are to be that fully and completely. And the responsibility of that is more a self promise and commitment rather than an externalized responsibility, which is what I think that many of us think in terms of responsibility. We think of it externally, like we're responsible for, the earth, right? We're responsible for taking out the trash. We're responsible for going to work, like whatever. This is about being responsible for being the most authentic, heart centered, loving version of ourselves, towards ourselves, for ourselves that we can bring to the world, which is a level of self governance in this Capricorn season, because Tom is going to speak to us about the Pluto in Aquarius, right? And that very lengthy transit. I just want people to be able to get through the next couple of weeks, right? From going from a transition from the holidays into the new year with decision making abilities that they have really earned the inner authority from in themselves to make those decisions. Like that's what I think now that our beliefs, right, have kind of shifted. And now it's time to make the decisions based on our belief shifting, first of all, from where our authority is, which is our heart, and making ourselves accountable in ways that we have mastery over ourselves spiritually, emotionally, and physically in cool ways that we've never had before.
Yeah. So, so picking up on all those vibes you're feeling, absolutely. And the more I think about it, you talk about that authority, and you mentioned the word authenticity, and that literally might
Mhm.
be the skeleton key for moving from 3D to 5D is authenticity. And I think that vulnerability is maybe the pool you can wade in to find your authenticity. It's going to take, I mean, it's going to feel vulnerable when you're making those commitments and decisions to your authenticity. But
Yeah.
fortunately, it's also some other planets have really been helping us in this transit, as Saturn and Neptune have been in Pisces for quite a minute now, too,
Mhm.
and and helping us clear out all those other timelines and karmic uh, contracts or baggage or whatever you want to call it. Like it's really been assisting us and giving us opportunities in the back half of this Capricorn Pluto transit to clear it so that now we don't have that with us now. So we can be a little more vulnerable and like stepping into our authenticity.
If we choose,
If
because
we
let's be
choose.
honest,
Right. We choose.
worlds are dividing.
Fre- Frequencies, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
No, and I say that
Yeah.
from this in between space, which is where transformation happens, because you have a belief that can limit you. So you've shed that. Now you make a decision to begin to transform the limited belief. And then all of a sudden, this expansive new horizon of possibility, right? Limitless possibility can begin to open up, which is where I think like a fourth and fifth pyramid discovery by Robert Edward Grant. And you can catch him on YouTube, is the belief that, because apparently people are taught when they work at the pyramids, there's only three. We're the keepers of the three pyramids. We're the keepers of the three pyramids. We are here to be the keepers of the three pyramids. Like that is really reinforced. And he is from outside of the system, if you will. He just became connected to these folks about 8 years ago. And I find it very intriguing that his belief was just shaped differently because he was not in that environment, but he also chose to explore, right? Outside of what other people just said was true. And if people are going to be really ready for 2025 in general, it is to be malleable from within oneself at a level that your beliefs really are neutral in terms of judgment. Okay. So neutrality with judgment. They can bend and contort with about everything else. And know that where your solid ground is from governing those things within yourself.
Yeah. And uh
Welcome to the
I think
wave.
the discovery, yeah, the pyramids is just a it's like a validation of a new timeline opening up.
Mhm.
Because I mean, um, it's not that worlds are dividing. They've always been divided. There's always been multiple. And yes, choosing which one to be on has always been before us too. It's just now remembering that we have that choice and that response that comes in our responses. It's not like I don't want it to induce fear that, like, oh, here it comes, they're splitting right now. No, they've always been divided. There's always been the multiple timelines and frequencies. There always is, was, will be. We're just choosing, remembering that we have that power to do so.
Said by a physicist. I think that one of the most important things that we need to include is your vision for your legacy. Like, if you want to draft in Capricorn energy and you want to put it to use. And so for me, the earth, right, is in Cancer, and I'm a Cancerian. So I am doing my 6 month out plan of how I want to feel in 6 months based on my decisions that I'm making now. And Capricorns are strategists, and they are folks that they take a focus on long term, their impact, their legacy. And I think that if we stay committed to like disciplined action that can align with our greater vision for our own self governance and our own empowerment, we're going to use the energy of this season really effectively. And it's exhibited culturally by making New Year's resolutions. So I invite people to actually consider what is the most authentic thing that they can ask for in terms of dreaming big rather than telling themselves things that they just don't want to do anymore. I just had big deja vu, bro.
That's a good sign.
Wow.
Okay. So the Empower Ranger Surf Report kind of comes to a conclusion. I think I was already totally tranced out when we started. I think that the end was the beginning was the end, and here we are back where we started. And I think that we are ready for our guest. And Scott, I mean it this time. You are introducing our guest.
Okay. I should have prepared for more.
Go for it, bro.
So, this is the first astrologer that we've actually had as a guest on our show, I believe, right, Michelle? We
Yes,
haven't.
it is.
Yeah. And I was introduced to Tom Parsons, not Thomas, um, by Michelle. And beyond being an astrologer, when I had my first consultation with him, I was blown away by his otherworldly intuitive sense and his connection to beyond the planets, the ability to see into the nuances of how it can be in somebody's personal life, but then also the massive collective uh, effect that the planets have on our planet. Um, so, without further ado, I mean, the only PMAFA astrologer in the state of Tennessee. I don't know. It might even be further than that in the South, but I know in the state of Tennessee, deep bow to someone who I hope one day to become a true student and apprentice of. And I just do that vicariously now, the one and only Tom Parsons.
It's a
Thank you very
lovely
much.
Tom Parsons.
I have
Thank
a
you
little.
so much
I
for
have a little.
joining us this morning. Welcome to Empowerment Unleashed Now. Thank you, thank you. I kind of gave you a little plug already, Tom, as like a spiritual like papa to me. Like I feel, and I share with so many of my clients that until you sit with Tom, I don't know that you fully have perspective on yourself dimensionally and in terms of your authenticity and your purpose. Without your star map, you're just navigating kind of like 10%, if 100% capacity. And it has been a life changing experience to sit with someone who knows your star map and what you've come to bring to the planet. And without further ado, the man who's going to help to support us to understand this magnificent transit of Pluto and Aquarius. And Scott and I just are so thankful that you're sharing some of your time with our listeners today. Tom, thank you again.
Thanks for inviting me. And like I say, I have a cold, so sure, my voice is going to be a little bit, for those that have a background in jazz, a little bit of blue rolls to it, so to speak.
Nice.
You sound like old man Winter.
I feel like so. Anyway, yes, I've been an astrologer for quite some time actually, and just give you an idea how I got into it, because you never know. I mean, I look back at it like some people that I had a calling. Didn't realize it at the moment, but at that moment, but that's how I looked at it. I was actually in college and taking the college kind of credit courses like psychology, philosophy, religion, spirituality, but I was, of course, reading like about Skinner and Freud and Adler. And then I started reading about Carl Jung, and he started talking about sun moon cycles. Well, wait a minute. Nobody else is talking about this. Why is he talking about this? And so I, went to, the library and started picking up books, and his books, and started investigating more. And it just resonated with me, is more or less like what it did. And so I was actually lucky enough to study with two great astrologers. They're both still living, as a matter of fact. Uh, and the other thing is that not only studying with them, which gave me a very authentic kind of like introduction to astrology, because I did study with some people, some astrologers, and I think one of the things we need to understand when you go to a lecture, you're going to study with an astrologer, and you need to get some background, because there are, and I hate to be this blunt about it, but there are prostitutes in every business. That's about what it's all about, is what it is. And so I actually became a vegetarian, started doing yoga 4 nights a week. I think my first book was about Parmeshi Yogananda's autobiography, and then getting into astrology books and things like that. My family actually thought I needed to see a therapist. I think they really thought I needed to see a psychiatrist, is what it was. But anyway, I just kept on my own, and I um, sort of like started spending less time with certain people because we just weren't resonating, is what it is. So then I just started, sort of like spending less time with them, and then choosing people that I could, talk about, things that not only dealt with astrology, but I remember, got into Manuel Novalsky, Corinne Harleen, and Max Heidel with Rosicrucianism, and Rudolf Steiner with anthroposophy, which I really stuck with. And I think I've got about a dozen of his books. I actually went to the Waldorf School in Detroit to study astrology, as a matter of fact, when there were only four schools in the world, one in London, New York, Detroit, as well as like LA. And that even gave me a firmer foundation that I think I was on the right track, so to speak. I'll just look at it that way. So that's how
Yeah,
that's the quick biography, we'll put it that way.
I love that.
It feels very Aquarian that you were dropping relationships that didn't resonate with you then on the frequencies, and moved off, and then started attracting other things that were vibrating with you in your life. That seems like a pretty,
Yeah, I mean, exactly. But it's just that, it's like, yeah, I mean, going to certain social situations, that are outside, the framework of like, my friends and people that I can talk with. I'm just usually sort of like standing in a, corner nursing a glass of wine, so to speak, is what I'm doing.
mhm.
Yeah. Scott and I have often spoke like of the generational differences and kind of like the folks that were the forerunners and the pioneers energetically when people were not having conversations about these things, and when people's parents might have thought that they needed psychiatric care if they were speaking about such things. And, Scott and I are both Gen Xers that have had the privilege of kind of crossing over from some of those social mores about like what astrology was and what it wasn't. And, one of the things in my family was people used to say, you know, listen, people in California, we do this, but the rest of the world doesn't. So,
Right. Exactly.
don't talk about those things except when you're, home and you're there. I was like, oh, good advice. And now there are millennials that show up, young millennials in my office, and Gen Zers that the first thing that they ask you is, hey, Michelle, what is your sun and your rising and your moon sign?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, most of my clients now, um, you know, uh, well, let me just say it this way: I'm getting more into the '90s and 2000s, as clients now, which is pretty interesting. So obviously, it's starting to, as you say, resonate throughout the world here. I remember earlier in my days, they said, "Tom, you need to move out to California," and it's like I can't afford California. This is more or less like what it is.
It was a good choice to not go, Tom.
Exactly. So I'm actually from Detroit, and that's why I say it. That's where I. And let me just say this: just one little thing here, but I remember going to. I took a course in astronomy out there at U of M out in Ann Arbor, and just told them I was like really interested in astrology, and then I became. Sort of like the laughing stock of the class, is more or less like what it was. So it was kind of entertaining. I'm sure I was the entertainer, actually.
And the bravery that you had to actually like speak that, I mean, I remember sitting in a college class and people were talking about like this 26,000 year cycle. And they were
Right.
speaking, yeah, they were talking about like the Nemesis Death Star and was the Earth going to come to an end and da 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 da. And I remember sitting in class and I was like, I don't know, but it sounds like something like astrological, like a processional cycle. Like it just came into my awareness. And as a Gen Xer, we were kind of the people that just went underground and didn't say things like that publicly. And we would like talk to our friends about weird stuff, but we only had one or two friends that we could really talk to. And
Exactly.
it was just now the desire, I would say, to understand our connections to the stars and where we come from. And right now, I mean, we're only 1 degree Pluto into this transit into Aquarius, but you can already hear people speaking about galactic consciousness everywhere on the planet. I mean, we were talking, Tom, about the fourth and fifth pyramids being discovered now in Egypt. And, the guy that's discovering it, doing this work said, yeah, they're stargates.
Yeah, which
And
which I've read, you know what I mean, especially from Graham Hancock, you know what I mean, who's I think he's banned from going back to Egypt along with other Egyptian archaeologists because they even say that the Egyptians didn't build it because they just had copper tools, and how do you cut 2010 granite with a copper tool, so to speak, things of that nature. But the Egyptians are never going to give it up. But I have to give them also that maybe there was some kind of technology that has been kind of hidden from us that they did possess, that they were able to accomplish feats like that.
for sure. I just think that we're going to have a lot of letting go of what is old and some of these large collective beliefs that we've held. I think Pluto's just going to move right through them and just
Slice and dice it.
slice and dice. That's exactly like a ninja. It's
And we have to remember when Pluto comes into our life, it's there for a couple of years. And it works under a sequential way, step by step. And we have to understand that, like, because it's going to affect generations of people. Because let's look at it this way, there are approximately about 385,000 people born per day. So if you take that, times 3 years, then you have a cultural movement that everybody has Pluto at like 1 or 2 degrees in all the different signs, so to speak. So it's going to go on within them, you know what I mean? That they're going to start getting a different perspective of not only themselves, but a different perspective of life. That's what Pluto is all about. I mean, I've always explained it from a mythological point of view, that he rules the underworld. And, the underworld is, basically the shadows of our life, and, things that are the secrets, the unknown. And it kind of like causes us to start going through, a catharsis. But it really deals with things like, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, hurricanes, life and death. So we understand the intensity of what this planet can cause, not with the snap of a finger, not only over a few months, but over, 2 to 3 years is what more or less like goes on. And we just start seeing, things, we just have a different perspective. And the first thing that Pluto wants to do, I mean, if we, put it into our, 21st century, usually it causes us to start recognizing that there are certain things, because it has a subjective impact. We really get into the essence of who and what we are, and not so much what the essence of the ego wants and needs and desires at this particular time. So the thing is that we kind of like see things that are malfunctioning, not working, or that don't have meaning, any kind of meaning with us, any further. So obviously, the initial thing is that we want to kind of like take steps to fix it, so that it's going to be working, in our life. But the problem is that about a 90% of things that are in your life can't be fixed, and they need to be replaced. And the reason being, if we go through a catharsis, we're kind of like seeing things differently than we did before. And it empowers us, if it's a volcanic eruption, earthquakes and things like that. What do these things do? Nothing is ever the same after these things go on, is what goes on. And so the thing is that, it basically is sort of like, whether it's in a good pattern, or it causes us to sort of like forces us to learn new things, but it kind of like eliminates, well, let me put it this way, it demands that we sort of like eliminate the toxicities in our life, that we declutter our life, or to put it that way, sort of like clean out the closets of our life. And we just don't rewrite our script from the inside out in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. This takes time, because from day one, when we took that breath of fresh air and got born, we have to understand that our parents, our environment, education, all these things sort of like molded us just to be another mannequin in the window posing as a human being. And so when Pluto comes along, it sort of like wakes us up that this reality is this is something that's a little bit different. And so whether it's good or bad, we have to understand it wants you to see things differently, to clarify things. So as we go through the catharsis, it's like we see things that have been incubating within us, and we sort of like want to get these things out of the womb and bring them to the surface. But as we do these kind of things, we kind of realize that we've been maybe empowering other people and doing what they wanted to do, and we're just, standing there in the shadows, you know what I mean, and surrendering ourselves, as a slave, so to speak, under what they want from us. And it's a time to kind of like slowly but surely put on our breastplate and getting into the essence of the soul's growth. What does it want from me at this particular time? And so we slowly, as we, sort of like empty out the closets of our life, we replace them, with things that are going to be much more natural, or to our nature, and what the soul has really chosen for us at this particular time in its evolution to sort of like embrace. I'll put it that way. So it gets pretty interesting.
So do you feel like with Pluto that it's best to just not resist as far as guidance for somebody? Because it's going to happen anyway. The transformation's going to happen. So if we like resist it, and it could be more painful or more challenging. But if you just like resist and allow the the closet to burn,
Right.
is
Well,
that
that's what it is. I
good?
mean, I think this is why astrology, we have to understand when the planets in the heavens, so to speak, as well as like certain fixed stars, black holes, and things of this particular nature that I encompass in my readings is more or less like what it is. I'm um, not so fond of the asteroids. I'm sure the other astrologers are just going to get me a lot of emails for that. You know what I mean? But I think there's 6 or 7 asteroids around there that they're using that I think make for a great philosophical and theoretical conversation. But and that's fine. You know what I mean? But what are you doing with the other 2,300 near Earth asteroids? And what made you pick those is how I would look at it. So I kind of like the dwarf planets, like Sirius and actually Pluto. I don't know why they did Pluto that way, but they did. So, but yeah, you're right. When they come around, it's an unknown because we're breaking away from sort of like um, how our third eye is like calcified. I'll put it that way. And so we're starting to loosen that up and seeing things, having a better perception, not only reality, but I think our reality, is what goes on. So if you're resisting because you've just been, maybe because of even your parents, you know what I mean, or your friends, and thinking that maybe you're losing it at this particular time, and so, yeah, some people fight it. And even though you're fighting it, you have to understand that, like, sooner or later, things like getting a divorce, quitting your job, and making a major move, whether you like it or not, these are going to be the kind of things that can go on because really what they're doing is that it's giving you a better perception and empowerment of yourself as well as reality. But those people that have what we call nice patterns, okay, then they sort of like embrace these changes. And, so marriages go on, change of jobs, going into business, buying your first home, getting pregnant, these kind of things go on. But we don't do it with a snap of a finger. There's a, sort of like a change, as well as like, how we're thinking. So we're sort of like breaking away from the imprisonment of matter, is how I would like kind of look at this. And it's interesting, Pluto being Aquarius, of course, was, if we look back, it was back in, I think, 1768 to 1798. And now it's, just entered and it's going to be here till January of 2044, as a matter of fact. But it's interesting, Aquarius is ruled by the planet Uranus, and Uranus was discovered at that particular time back in 1768 to 1798 by Herschel. And so I find that pretty interesting that the Aquarian nature was there because we discovered that planet, and that planet rules Aquarius. Is more or less like what it is. So
That's really interesting. I was doing some research. I think too that the number zero was invented during an era when Pluto was in Aquarius, and that's I believe from some step systems, zero is the number associated with Pluto. So that's interesting.
well,
Um, so as far as for our listeners, what could you tell them that some of the nuances you already alluded to, some of the characteristics of Aquarius, but being that it's an air sign versus it's just been in Capricorn, an earth sign.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I feel like maybe things are going to be like light speed faster now, right? But they're like, what kind of differences? And also like so it's already done its business in Capricorn, right? So what wisdom, that we've gained, what aptitudes that we've gained from this Capricorn transit can help us in these early stages of the Aquarius transit, and what can we expect? What does Aquarius mean? How is that air versus Earth's experience going to differ, and just whatever else you can drop?
Well, when we talk about the air, we just to quantify it for the people listeners that are here that don't have a background in astrology, air signs are dealing with communication. Is basically what it it deals with. But we have to understand Aquarius is, like you say, it is the future. And it's like the old song says down here in, Nashville, I can't do 55 anymore. So it's Aquarians are extremely progressive. They're the outlaws. They're the rebels. They're tired of the status quo and the monotony of life. They want to get off the leash and start doing what they want to do and have more freedom to exercise the neurons in their brain, you know what I mean, to sort of like get out of that mundane box that they've been put in. So it's Aquarius is very progressive.
Yeah.
And it deals with sort of like a mental awakening, and it basically wants to open up, a new phase of consciousness for the world at large, is what it wants to do. And so I would look at it this way. I have a list here of some things that were done in the 1760s, and because I can't get them all, but I just want to read a few of them all so you understand what Aquarius is about to introduce, at these next 20 years, which I'll even add my stuff. But back in the 17th, look at it, the telescope was discovered. Okay, monumental. Then we get into cast iron was created. No more wooden bridges, is what it was. Then we had the stethoscope, bifocals, ambulances were created. Then the cotton gin was created because the United States was producing about 75% of the cotton. But then we have to get into the hot air balloon. We started preserving food in jars. The U.S. patent was opened up. Noel Webster, the dictionary, the first patent office, the first bank, Mozart, Beethoven, but things like the Rosetta Stone was discovered. You know what I mean? The Bill of Rights, which deals with the independence of, like, you don't tell an Aquarian to what to do, that's for sure. And then actually, some of the negative parts, there was a major famine in Iceland. And why?
Yeah.
Because of volcanic eruptions wiped out all the fertile soil, is what more or less like what went on. But the Army was created, the Navy was created, the Marines were created. Washington was twice elected the president. Matter of fact, he was going to be elected a third time, and he didn't want it. Is more or less he was ready to leave office. But then things like the yellow fever. I think it was like in Philadelphia, 5,000 people came out with yellow fever. But yet at the same time, the smallpox vaccine was created.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we have both sides of an issue, that were more or less like, sort of like going on at that particular time. Even First Bank was created at that particular time. So as we get into, obviously, the 21st century, and if Uranus represents, or Aquarius represents the new age, and then we have to understand the acceleration. I look at it, I think it's the latest iPhone is the i14. I'm not sure. Maybe I could be corrected on that.
Yeah. We're up to 16, Tom.
Oh, okay. Thank you so
Next
much.
week it'll be 17.
Next, I was going to say, and they're dropping it like.
Oh, no. But see, I think they've already invented the i21.
Absolutely.
But they gotta, sell this out first. But I think technology is already there. It's in the closet, and we'll bring it out. You know what I mean, to make some more money here. But the thing is also is that, Uranus, when we say the hot air balloon, and the thing like the cotton gin steamboats and these kind of things that dealt with, technology. So I'm just looking at it because, especially with the beginning, let's just say, of the next 20 years, is that obviously Musk is going to be a very close advisor, um, pardon me, to Trump. This guy wants to go to Mars, and his spaceships are outperforming NASA's ability to create the spaceships and technology. So I have no doubts by 2040 to basically say, well, probably, not only are they there, but we could be developing a colony there. Is how I would look at it. I don't know why we want to go there. I guess it's pretty interesting that maybe we could like get into terraforming, something like that could go on, like the Sci-Fi Channel, those kind of things say, and I don't doubt that that can go on. But so I'm just saying that technology, I think, is going to go over and above anything that we even understand. Pluto actually rules finances, the goods of the dead, so to speak. I'll put it that way. But it deals with like your health insurance, your life insurance, credit card, and bank card and all those kind of stuff. So I'm looking at it that we will probably not only have United States or each country create their own cryptic currency instead of cash, or it's like they say they've always been. I think it's like I think it's one of the Scandinavian countries that you can have a chip put in your wrist and you can
Yeah,
pay,
it's
pay by
insane.
that now. So I could see things like that. And Aquarius deals with groups of people.
Mhm.
And so they deal with like, society, groups, committees, organizations. But that means it deals with the educational system. And I think you're probably going to see more people doing homeschool is how I would look at it. Because um, I mean, I feel very sorry for teachers because they there's a program that they have to teach is that it's extremely, outdated. I don't think it's doing anything, to raise the consciousness and the intellect of our children. So I think you're going to see more schooling, or maybe there will be a change, in our, educational systems and things of that particular nature. But we have to remember that Aquarius deals with the greater whole. So if the American Revolution went on, the French Revolution went on, we have to understand, yeah, we just disposed, we didn't, but Saddam was just disposed over there in Syria. So what else is going to go on? You know what I mean? To create these revolutions to overthrow the dictatorship, so to speak.
Well,
So
I also,
getting to
yeah,
I look at it as a form of capitalism, but capitalism to me basically means being able to like sort of like speak your piece and study what you want to study, worship whomever you want to worship,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
women not exactly having veils over their face or being denied their intellectual circumference that they can help to, expand the greater whole of, things of that nature. So it's going to be, I think, a very fast moving time. And then I want to get back to the 17s because let's remember also Benedict Arnold was caught. So who are
It's
we going to catch that's
a
been
whole
doing
lot of
things
people.
beneath the surface?
A
Exactly.
whole lot of
So
people.
all that is going to be going on.
It already is, and I think it's gonna accelerate with the Mars
Yeah.
transit that we have that's happening right now.
Exactly.
Um, I think we're watching Hollywood crumble, and I think that we all know what we're referencing here. There's a lot of I mean, one thing about Aquarians, so my brother's an Aquarian, my cousin is Aquarian, um, my best friend is an Aquarian. I've been in a relationship with an Aquarian for 31 years, and I can tell you that the thing about Aquarius is that no two of them are alike. The pattern is that there is no pattern with them.
I will second that, by the way.
That's their individuality shines through more their authenticity. And so I feel like if we could like put that overlay on the collective,
Right.
I don't even know what we're cooking up once we all have our little authentic lights turned on. Like dreaming big when you were talking about the cotton gin, Tom, when you were talking about, the things that we invented, I feel like the unleashing of technology, but also those two wavy lines. So you've got the technology, and then you've got all of these people saying, wait, we need to take care of the earth. We need to go back to seed and to food the way it originally was. We don't want our food engineered. We don't want our medicine
I'm
engineered.
glad you're bringing that up. Exactly. Exactly.
Right? So there's this real like you never know what you're going to quite get, but I can tell you this, if we can detach when we hear some of these out there things that are going to blow our minds, like that emoji just whoosh, the top of your head is just going to go, what? I feel like the innovation can be so well balanced because we are saying, hey, wait, if you want to put a chip in your wrist, groovy movie, but I'm not going to do that. The only chip I'm going to have is on my credit card so far. And that's enough for me. Those boundaries that Aquarians preserve because it's about their identity. I'm hoping we're going to have a big reinforcement of that where discernment comes forward. Like when we just started talking about, I mean, this is a very mundane, but it was a collective experience. Why do Fruit Loops in Canada have blueberry and carrots as their dye? And we're still using red dye and yellow dye. So then guess what just happened? So the people started talking about it. It shows up on whatever USA Today and in the New York Times and in whatever people believe those things to be anymore. But all of a sudden the FDA said, oh, maybe we should ban red dye number 3. That's the power of the people.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about. When I say volcanic eruption, I think there's a global rising, that's going to be going on because, as I said before, what's really happening is that Aquarians, it's a mental awakening that's going to be going on. And Aquarians are going to feel it the most. Well, actually, I could say the Aries, the Geminis, the Libras, the Sagittarius, the Aquarians are going to embrace this in a very positive way. All right. So they're going to be, they don't have to hold back, in presenting like new information, new ideas, and things of this particular nature. Whereas the Scorpios and the Tauruses and the Leos, and those born in the early dates, like, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, they're the ones that are to be blunt about, are probably going to need a liquor cabinet for a while, as they go through this transition.
Thinking of an
Um,
Aries I know that was born on the 23rd, and I'm like, okay.
yeah. So uh, I love what you just said, Michelle. I feel like expect the unexpected when it comes to Aquarius, right? And
Totally.
then you can like gather that neutrality a little easier when you're just expecting it. And I was looking up to reference that other Pluto Aquarius transit that I was telling you about, and it was in Baghdad, the Golden Age of Baghdad, 795 to 819. And interestingly, so zero was invented, algebra, and the word
Yes.
algorithm. Algorithm, the concept of algorithm, and the word was created. How impactful is that word in our lives now?
Wow.
But what difference of a meaning does algorithm have now? That's pretty interesting. And speaking of Mars, you mentioned that also, Michelle, and I just wanted to elaborate on that a little, maybe to listeners that weren't specific, knowing what you were talking about. But Mars is moonwalking or retrograding, basically
Mhm.
in complete opposition to Pluto.
That's in a centigrade.
Well, yeah, what so that'll be one of our soonest immediate experiences collectively that's going on right now. That's kind of profound. What can you share with us about that further, Tom?
Well, I think we have to understand the ingredients of the Mars, especially is that, rules the sign of Aries. And Aries are the warriors of the zodiac, so to speak, because the planet Mars is the planet of war. It's the red planet. But dealing with war, it means it's assertive. It wants to move forward with its wants, needs, and desires. It doesn't surrender. It doesn't take no for an answer, by the way. So I look at it that it's a pretty inspiring planet, is how how I would look at it. It's like a time to sort of like flex your muscle and go after the things you want, need, and desire. Now, it's interesting because Mars also co-rule of the heart. Okay. And but Mars also not only a co-rule of the heart, and we could put this into the Aquarian kind of category that Pluto is in, saying more people are going to be working out, or as Michelle suggested, earlier, become much more discriminating about the kind of foods we're putting in our body. My wife even said this year we're planting more than just tomatoes and cucumbers and I think we had red peppers that we planted. She wants a bigger garden, so to speak. So, but Mars deals with sex, is what it deals with. So, if it's in opposition to Pluto, it brings to the surface, almost on a global scale, things that have been going beneath the surface. So we're going to see all the sexual exploitation that's been going on, throughout the world, not just in the States or England or someplace like that. This is going to be something that the world becomes very cognitive of, is how I would look at. So the guilty parties, are basically going to be brought to the surface. And we have to understand Pluto. Well, Pluto, if it deals with the underworld, that means that you're going to, probably be isolated for the rest of your life. Is how I would put it. With along with the other, geez, how should I put this out? Well, it's along with the other animals, that don't have a stimulated kind of consciousness in some respects.
I don't want to even insult the animals in that way, Tom.
Oh, I know.
One of the things that I have said, and Scott and I have really been working with for ourselves, because like we're kind of just professional students, is neutrality, even in the face of something as horrific as what it is that we're talking about, right? And one of the things that I think that communally we're going to have to evolve beyond. And there was this example, Scott, you've heard me use this. You're probably, oh, she's telling this story again, but it's a good one for the Mearshall art bag. Okay. So human trafficking is a really tough place for me personally to sit. My warrior comes out, and I've had to really move to this place of, I don't want to reflect back the savagery that I believe, or the lack of awareness, right? I don't want to be that reflection back to that. Okay. And so in Superman, and I remember this distinctly because my dad was a Superman person and I was always a Batman kind of a gal. So he made me go to the Superman movie, and it was the one where they actually like destroyed Superman's planet, right? Kryptonite. Was that his planet, Scott? Kryptonite? Okay, because I was a Batman girl,
Honey, yeah.
right? So that's the planet that they blew up, right? Because his planet was destroyed, right? That's how he kind of came to Earth, right? That's the story, right? So I remember watching this film, and there was a galactic council, and these people had committed mass murder. right? They just blew up a whole planet. And there was a galactic council trying to decide what to do. What do you do with this? And it was the coolest answer. And if somebody would ever give me a platform for this, they'd be like, wow, okay, we have to develop the technology. They flat Stanley'd these people. So you went from a 3-dimensional you, okay, to a 2-dimensional you, okay, like flat Stanley. You were placed in a mirror and you were set out into space for eternity to just keep watching your reflection. That's a very Aquarian solution to me. like you don't kill them, okay? You don't destroy them. You don't like disintegrate them. You just flat Stanley them to a neutral place. Like you can't harm anybody.
Right.
And you're with you. God bless your soul. Float in eternity. And like I'm just saying, I'm saying that, we're gonna have to solve this stuff, y'all. And I understand this. Welcome to Pluto in Aquarius. I mean, some of it is really exciting and innovative, but some of it is the gnarly stuff that we are going to have to suss out. And that resonated with me because you're not obliterating them.
Well,
Neutralizing.
yes. And so speaking of sex and exciting and energizing, but also to shine a different light on this Mars and Pluto opposition. As it's retrograding and we're re-examining all of our belief systems and historical maybe experiences with that, karmic past lives, all of that, I do think we might find as it moves back forward. And I do see this in the younger generations and already like a Palladian influence coming in that I think expect the unexpected, possibly, when it comes to ninja slicing of all the antiquated belief systems around sexuality and that type of thing. Because I do see younger generations are already dating online apps, right, and meeting people completely already stepping into different experiences and vantage points of sexuality. And it's all about the vibe. It's the frequency. What vibe are you on? And I think that's where everyone's going to be coming from when it comes to sexuality, is connecting on a frequency level. And that's going to be the most, I think, important thing going forward. I think taboos are going to start dropping left and right from certain frequencies,
right,
when it comes to sexuality going forward. I mean, I'm just thinking, expect the unexpected with that. And the Palladian influence, I just think we're going, which is all about a lighthearted, right? Like the scales in Egypt, the only way to ascend is you place a feather, the Libra scales. Tom, you're a Libra, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Michelle has her moon in Libra. I don't want to get away.
yeah, it's the heart lighter than a feather, you can ascend. And there's been so much heavy intonation in the Piscean era around sexuality.
So
And
Scott,
yeah, moving up, I just think it's about the lighthearted Palladian aspect, and that's how we spread our energy through sexuality. And I think the intuition is very much connected to sensuality, and creativity is as well. So expect the unexpected. I don't know what's going to happen, but things are going to change.
but I also think that we need to be really specific about the Pleiadians. They're light bodies. Okay. So some people have hypothesized that as we are in an ascension process, our chakra system, I mean, our DNA is expanding, right? Also, possibly raising, right, our chakras up. So, sacral and solar plexus, will look very different. You and I have talked about the higher mind, the high heart. Um, when we're talking about in terms of the Aquarian transit, I think you're talking about some of the Mars stuff that's happening. I thought it was really interesting what you were speaking about with the younger generation. Um, I think that there's, and I'm fascinated by this astrologically, culturally, the differences generationally, and our gifts that we bring. I think that there's a real rebalancing. Okay. So but it's an approximate of just gender in general,
Mhm.
just that in general. Um, and I see that in so many generations, right? Across the board. Like I'll say from my dad's generation, my dad really embraces color. Okay. Like colors, like he loves to wear aqua and pink and, like things that I remember as a child. He was like, hey, a little bit too flashy for me, or, real men don't wear pink, or whatever that mold was, that like you can see people exploring, like, wow, I've always liked pink my whole life. So, you know what? I'm going to fill my closet with pink stuff and I'm a man. That kind of stuff, I think, is about that authenticity that the younger people have come with already, whereas we've had to learn because we were molded to fit in, right? We had to fit in. And now we're like, shoo, okay, remember when people would eat too much and they would unbutton their pants like at the dinner table? Like, that's really a gnarly example.
But it is one.
What? All right, I'm just gonna relax. This is who I really am. Like that part is super exciting, you know? And I think that Tom said it like about Pluto, the destruction and the volcanic, possibilities for transformation. How do you embrace and like love that as opposed to repelling and fearing or resisting, because what we resist will persist, right? And so that's something that I want to invite listeners, like for me, and Tom knows my chart and Tom knows my heart and Scott knows my chart and he knows my heart. And for me, I'm coming into, and I had to do a huge reframe about this all. And that's why I think that Brother Scott came into my life, because I am a sunshine kind of a person. I am a summer sun. Old man winter is not really somebody that I chilled with, no pun intended, most of my life. But recently, because my Capricorn is a compliment to me and I've had to embrace this, I want people to realize that embracing what is uncomfortable can actually be one of your greatest teachers. And so many of us right now, for a myriad of reasons, are uncomfortable, and I never thought I would say this, like how to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But in a way, beyond that, how can you get excited about it? Like, I challenge myself when it's winter and it's really cold to get outside in it and be like, wow, this is a different sensory experience. And rather than feeling disempowered, like, oh my God, I'm withering without warmth and sunshine. It's like, wow, it's the alchemy thing, Scott, that we keep talking about with all of our guests. It's taking the elements that we have in front of us and cooking up something that's different with it, which to me is so Aquarian, because they're never going to come up with the normal person answer, which is the coolest part about them, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
They're never going to come up with like what we would think about in some balanced kind of a way,
Mm.
So to embrace that is to me to enter into a new awareness and a consciousness and a choice that we're actually calling all of this into, like, we contracted for this. Like, go see Tom and look at your chart. Like, you agreed.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, our soul has chosen, this moment, what I mean, to reap the benefits as well as like, some of the paybacks, for, your behavior, so to speak. And I always, kind of like, let people know that, because I think just even logically, you know what I mean? It's like to create who and what we are as a human essence. Boy, for science to do this on its own, I really think it's really kind of flabbergasting. The mathematics that would have to be involved. And because I get astronomy today, one of the things that goes on, modest elements, 1 trillion galaxies. Each galaxy has about 600 billion stars. Then they have about 300 billion planets. So to say, when you reincarnated, are we coming back here, to sort of like finish through the third dimension reality and entity, to what our soul, desires, at this time, or, is this our last rodeo and we are going to another planet in our, galaxy or another galaxy? Certainly that isn't a given. And then Pluto and Uranus, the thing is, I know Scott's into this, but the thing is that we can start understanding, this quantum mechanics, so to speak, and being able to stand here and then all of a sudden transmute ourselves to another, place, maybe from here to California or whatever. But those kind of things, are going on. And then as far as healing is concerned, you talking about what they're putting on our foods. Well, how about the antidotes instead of maybe an aspirin or going to get a script? How about maybe radio frequencies? How about, color frequencies and things of this particular nature that are not, that are going to be introduced, so to speak, is how I would look at it. So I think there's going to be just a whole new form, what I mean, of healing us from the inside out, not only in a physical way, but I guess in a spiritual and more psychological way is how I would look at it. So we become a little bit more holistic throughout our body and, wake up that third eye, let alone the pineal gland.
And possibly heal us multidimensionally,
Oh, absolutely.
right? I think that's, so we had something happen this week. My dog, healthy dog, had a seizure, and he is a Beagle Corgi mix. And obviously, we did all the traditional, went to the hospital, had the range of blood work. There was nothing remarkable that occurred. Okay. So thank God his little head was just twitching and he was warm. I gave him Reiki, when he got home, calmed down. Eventually, the little head stops twitching. And I have my own intuitive abilities, as we all do. And I had some misgivings about possibly some environmental shifts, right? And like, do I want to shift those this way, that way? And legitimately, Noah, our producer, had booked me on somebody's show, Sophia Reisberg, who is someone who worked with humans with their bodies, and she's a body talk person. She works with animals now exclusively. And so I connected Sophia with Scooby Max, our little Borgie. And it was incredible, first of all, through the technology, through the quantum field, right? She's reading, she's channeling him, okay, because she's looking at a picture of him, but she also is using technology, a frequency, to access his meridians, to see that his amygdala was having, obviously an event, right, that created the seizure. But we dove down into an epigenetic dialogue about him clearing his ancestral line of beagles. Like he's in an ascension process. He took, and I know because all I told her was my dog had a seizure, Sophia. So I didn't tell her anything else because I was tending to him and the technology. So when she was tapping into his geolocation, like who he is in the quantum field, which is so Aquarian, he laid down like on a blankie, like on the couch, went to sleep. And then Sophia sends me this 21-minute, session with him as she's running her computer. And she's speaking to him. Half our listeners have shut off, and my father included in that. But nonetheless, so she's talking to him and he's answering. And he's talking about his ancestral line. He's talking about me and what I do with clients with colon hydrotherapy, and that I can actually help dogs with their food. Okay. And he was like telling Sophia to tell my mommy this. He said, I want her to know that this is only going to happen once. It's not going to happen again. And that I was very scared having it because it was a full body grand mal seizure, but it was not traumatizing because I got the help that I needed. And I know that you're going to be a helper, my steward, to help me to get well. So I'm not traumatized by it. This is like a completely Aquarian, telepathically connected, intuitively connected. We're using the technology for the good. And what caused all of that possibly is EMF radiation. So I have to proceed with certain things to put a covering on my meter and to do something to my right, because I want to protect him. And so the good that can come from the innovative and the technological, right? Let's use the good PEMF and send that out from cell towers rather than shredding DNA, right? When we're trying to bring forward our homo luminous, our light bodies, and have 24 strands of DNA. And he told Sophia that they're adding 2. And so he's going to have 12 strands. And Sophia hadn't heard that information yet, from another creature. And he had a bit of a galactic consciousness. I would have never said this publicly 5 years ago. I'd be like, whew, people are going to think I have gone kook-a-doodly-doo. And, that's the shift that is so palpable that even though we might not know where it's going and we might not know the transformation, and it might feel like everything has been set on fire at times, if we can hold the belief that there is something that we signed up for to give us exactly these opportunities, I feel like the empowerment that we're going to continue to experience. Now, of course, I'm a Gemini rising, right, Tom? So I have little to no Aries in my chart. I don't have any Sag. So yeah, those things. What do you say for people besides the liquor cabinet, Tom, that do have a lot of energy that might resist?
Yeah, but I think that they need to start seeing maybe holistic, kind of people is how I would look at it. Like you were saying, like the Reiki healer, get into acupuncture, start doing some yoga, Maybe start going to some lectures and seminars that deal with subjects that are outside kind of like the orthodox kind of spiritual thinkings in some respects is how it, because these aspects, especially with Pluto here, absolutely some people are going to become, disillusioned with what's going on in their life. But instead of like fearing that, they need to understand that they need to embrace it because it's time for that chapter of what I could say, even your karma is over with, and we're, let's get it out of the egg and let's get it birth and let's see what this next chapter is all about. Pluto, one of the examples I use with my clients, um, deals with puberty. And I've talked to you both about that, is that puberty is all about, you playing with a doll or playing with a toy. And we're going to close the chapter. But I'm opening up a new chapter of being, where the essence of, another essence of me gets a chance to give birth to that. I'm going to start, well, in my case, I'm going to start playing with the girls, it's, instead of the boy. And then it's like I empower myself. I don't need the babysitter. I become the babysitter. And then, especially you as a woman, Michelle, I mean, you go through a transmutation and a metamorphosis, you develop as a woman. And these Pluto cycles are with us in our 20s, 30s. The 40s are hard because we have three other planets at the same time that are just, kind of like slapping your face. I'll put it that way. So it's the middle life crisis. You know what I mean? But these are all stages of evolutionary growth working through the human entity. And this is what life is all about. And then we're going to, pass away and then either come back here or go someplace else, maybe go to Aries, you know what I mean? Maybe go to Orion. And I think Orion is really interesting because your moon is in Orion. So you have I think, more of an intimate conversation with the, um, with let's say, the conversation that it wants to have with you in some respects. You know what I mean? And Orion, it's not only the three pyramids in Egypt that are in mathematical environment, in alignment with it. Over in Mexico, they have the sun and the moon thing, and then even our own Hopi Indians have
Yes.
7 mesas, which because there are 7 stars in the constellation of Orion. So why did they do that? Was that an accident? you know and I don't think any of that is that, and then we have to go back, to Atlantis, you know what I mean, to Lemuria, to the Mu, and all these other kind, and understand that we grew out of the Neanderthals. I think we grew out of a lot of other things besides, that particular part of our, evolution, so to speak. And so what's the next part is before we die, you know what I mean? And I think that instead of being like disillusioned with our light patterns and being fearful of it, we need to sort of like accept it that like, hey, it's a time to move on. I mean, I had this, I remember when I got divorced and I just looked at it that like, oh, well, it's a time for me that I guess I'm going to be meeting somebody that wants to spend the rest of their life with me. So I helped my ex-wife move. You know what I mean? We still talk 2 or 3 times a year because I'm an astrologer. But it gave me a chance to meet a woman, that I'm with now, uh, and that I feel blessed, like in some respects. But yeah, I think people need to look at, like sort of like the downside and look at, well, this is an opportunity, to me to be actualize a new phase in my life. The vitamin B12 shot, get away from the mundane and get into meeting somebody that has a real essence, that you can be compatible with.
Yeah, totally.
I love that you mentioned opportunity, Tom. I feel like the answer to that question, Michelle, how do we get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, is possibly framing it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And we feel that.
Yeah.
And so do we even accept that every experience that we have, we attract to ourselves, then we can see literally everything as an opportunity. Because for some, I think it's even uncomfortable when something's going well to receive.
Oh, right.
Feel like that's obviously whenever if we're in fear, that's uncomfortable, or if there's change.
Mhm.
But there are some that even struggle with success or like receiving compliment or whatever, and that can be
Mhm.
like that's an opportunity to just receive.
Yeah,
So,
receiving is a tough one. Like I have clients that just,
right.
they bring gifts to me and I'm just like, "Oh, I don't have a gift to give back to you." Like that's an opportunity. You and y- you call things work and I call things opportunities, right? I mean, that's like a joke between us because
Opportunities too, though.
come on, that Pluto did its job 15 years. Get rid of the
Yeah.
work, bring on the opportunities.
Right.
You
Yeah.
did it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's that's it, but that reframing and that reorganization, the remembering, like the retrograde that we're kind of still experiencing, right? I mean, I feel very intimidated because I have more intuitive ability than, I do the astrological. But I think that in this bouncing of, is it Mars retrograding in Cancer and then through Leo and then back in to Cancer? Okay. Oh, thank God. I'm nodding. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. So with that, there's going to be some weird, like we step in and then we step out, and then we step in and we step out. And to me, that's the cleaning out the closet until you have it organized beautifully the way that you want it to. So all those opportunities are kind of in a way that you can authentically put them like to use, because I feel like that's in a Aquarians kind of can detach to attach to something. It's like they have to go all the way around the galaxy through the back door to come into the front and say, "Hey, that is an awesome idea." And you're like, "Oh my God, I thought I was going to like die waiting for that answer. Like it took forever," said the Gemini rising, right? Like, what? And so that patience, that long term, that 20-year transit, like Tom was saying, like these things don't happen overnight, and these little Gen Zers that are kind of the masters of like energy, and they expect things to just be like, "Oh, yeah, right. I remember when I could just think something and it appeared right in front of me." So it's like, but okay, you entered 3D now. So in order to bring that alchemy, you have to navigate density as well, to bring that magic back, but to make it playful.
Mm. Yeah.
Because
Because the biggest
Pluto,
part of that density is emotion, right? And that's like what's so
yeah.
unique about Earth is our emotional field, probably because of the size of our moon compared to our planet, in respect to most of the others, right?
Do you agree with that, Tom? The emotional
Absolutely.
range?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that there's in that emotional range, to me, free will is what is like, and the ability to create is to me where we can take that emotional range and actually put it to good use as opposed to just an experiential overload, like where a lot of people, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to go there briefly. Our election came and went rather quietly, but some of the buildup and some of the aftermath for people, that's where the whole be your own
Okay.
president came from, sovereign nation of one. Like, okay, you know what? I don't really need a president. Like, I can be my own. Uh, there's there's a turning away from places, corporations that have taken power and we're reclaiming it. That's all we have to do is just reclaim it. Just like go get it and just take it back.
It's
You
like those
whole
revolutions, this whole period, you know? So, I mean,
yeah.
it's like when we were talking about relationships, you know, with like Pluto being, I think this is where we're going to see more people living together instead of getting married. It's what more or less like is going on. And I don't
Mhm.
think that whatever religion, what race, whatever, you know, is going to be going on, so that there's going to be much more, not only acceptance, but, you know, greater compatibility, you know, within, you know, the generations as a whole, and, you know, the different countries and all these other kind of things that are more or less doing. And this is why I like this aspect of Pluto going into Aquarius, because it basically says, I am here, and I'm not here to have a casual conversation with you. We're going to sit down and we're going to have a pretty, you know, deep seated kind of conversation and vocabulary here.
Yeah.
Those are the only kinds of conversations Tom has, guys. When you go to see Tom, that's the only way he's ever going to speak to you. It's the best part about going to see Tom. I love that aspect.
I have to put it this way also to you, Michelle, and thank you for that. But, you know, it's like, um, I try to go beyond our solar system. The ancients with this, I'm very fond of the ancients, you know, the Sumerians, and into, you know, Orion and the Pleiades and Sirius and things of this particular nature. And I find that many astrologers today are sort of like, you know, all caught up with these asteroids is how I would look at it. And so that's why I appreciated the asteroids. But it's like when you come to me, I would put it this way. Um, um, I'm not going to have this casual conversation with you. You're not my best friend. I'm not going to put lipstick on any kind of conversation that's going to happen here. You know, you're paying me to tell you the truth when your best friend is going to put lipstick on it. You know what I mean? So I just look at it that way. You know what I mean? Is how I would look at it. And I'm glad as I said before, I'm just glad that I sort of like, you know, took the exit in life, because that exit to me is, you know, sort of like a more genuine compass, you know, to the evolution of my life than the highway that I was on.
Did you use your chart, Tom, to make that exit, that detour? Did you like, were you reading your own chart and saying, I've got to do this? Or was it an intuitive
No,
knowing?
because I think it was, and it's interesting you say that because some clients call me intuitive. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
I would.
You know what I mean? I've got so much earth in me, I'll put it that way,
Mhm.
that I just like to deal with facts and figures and mathematics. I mean, I love mathematics, is more or less like what it is. And, but like I said before, it just something resonated, and I felt to go towards this more. And that's why I said earlier, you know what I mean, that I felt I had a calling. So, and it's like, so, you know, here am I, you know, today doing something that I really enjoy doing, and that you know, I have friends now that we let's just say we go out for dinner, and my goodness, we're talking about the Egyptians, we're talking about astrology, we're talking about the aliens that this is going to be their opening, by the way, in the next 20 years is how I would
Star
look.
brothers and sisters.
Yeah. And so, you know, so all those kind of things, you know, go on.
Yes.
And so it's like I just feel I'm in the right place, you know, the right space of time, so to speak. And I've reached you know, I've sort of like hopefully opened up that pituitary gland. I'd like to open up a little bit more. If I was what I, but let me give you one quick instance of what just happened here, because it has really startled me doing a reading. I have a stereo up here because when I'm in my office just doing stuff, I, you know, turn on the stereo. The stereo went on. Well, you got to press a button for it to go on. And this has happened once a week, you know, for the last month. And it's like, and so my wife, what do you think's going on? Well, what I think is going on is something's here, but I look at it, I'm not to fear it, but I need to sort of like pay attention. You know what I mean? To the client that is there, the topic of conversation that I'm talking about, or
Yes.
maybe I'm gravitating, towards that. Maybe I can um, sort of like resonate more with intuitive abilities, things of that nature. Because actually, I know this sounds absolutely crazy to maybe some of the clients that are listening, that are going to be listening. But I got a tuning fork and I'm putting it on my third eye and ringing it is what I'm doing. But there's a little bit of headache after the fact, but it's like, I'm just looking at it that like, I need to wake up something here. It's what goes on. And then I put,
What?
crystals, I'll put them out on a new moon
Yeah.
and then I put them under my pillow. You know what I mean? And that's going to sound absolutely crazy to certain clients, but I take that new moon vibratory rate, you know what I mean? And it's like, you know what I mean? Inject that vitamin B12 shot in me with whatever, the qualities that are going to be in that. But yet I think that like this is things that are going to be coming to masses of people, not just to, you and I and people like us.
That's right. That's right. Scott, do you have any closing questions for Tom? Because it would be a shame for me to say the last question. You would be really
Autumn. This first one might involve you putting on the intuitive cap in addition to everything. And if you don't get anything in, you don't. But you briefly alluded to Atlantis a little bit earlier. And in your intuitive and mathematical sense, what do you get in occurred in Atlantis when Pluto at its Aquarius transit during that era?
I think what happened is that there was maybe a compromise of the spiritual integrity, because that always happens. You know what I mean? Even though our government was founded upon, certain principles and beliefs and Bill of Rights and Constitution and things like that, we've seen through the years that that's been compromised. And I think with Pluto being in Aquarius, more and more people are going to be demanding that we get back and exercise our Bill of Rights, so to speak, that have morals and values and integrity. And I think that Atlantis, you know what I mean? I think it was just compromised is how I would look at it with that. But I think it was like certainly too bad it sank, but I think it was just a place that we were extremely highly evolved is how we would look at it. Right now they think that, the speed of light is like going to get us to the nearest star. Well, no, it's not.
it isn't.
Right. And so, and like black, the dark matter. And I think that we'll discover what that is all about. And it's going to aid us in this quantum physics that the scientists are talking about and getting into the 11, 12 dimensions of, life and that kind of stuff that the Germans in their string theory brought about.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that is because I do believe, I mean, I've been getting in that a lot of us here now have chosen this time because we were
we were there.
a raft from Atlanta. And also, when you eliminate, it's important to eliminate the illusion of linear time. When you remove that from our past lives, I wouldn't say that, then they're just alternate lives, right? I think a lot of us, one of our most recent lives was Atlantis.
Right.
So we're here, like really kind of right on the heels of it in this other, even a more formidable opportunity than possibly was Atlantis, because this is like the second time around, the phoenix from the ashes. It was like new in Atlantis, and like we were more version with the experience of technology and such. And like now,
I'm going to give a different perspective because I believe that I'm Lemurian.
right?
So,
Even further.
I believe that Atlantis was a lot like exactly where we sit today on this threshold of merging species together, merging species with computers, programming these things in ways that were not helpful no different than programming quartz now and how cell towers exist that could be sending out the good stuff to us. And I believe that Atlantis, similar to the Superman, and we're going to have Tom back for part two because we need to kind of, but I just wanted to leave this in the hopper, that Atlantis kind of destroyed Lemuria with its technology. And I'm not saying that this was intentional, but I believe it was a frequency war. And I believe that Lemurians had more of an organic basis and were easier in some ways to overtake, which I think this is the re-evolution of that now, and that we will not be. Actually, being organic will make us stronger now. And I feel like the Atlanteans used technology so much so that they sunk themselves eventually. The same fate that they kind of had with, you know, themselves, that they had done to someone else, like karmically. But I feel like just another me kind of a thing, meaning Atlantean, Lemurian, they're one in many ways, but I don't necessarily just think that everybody, I don't want to do a nominalization. That's my NLP master, because Atlantis does not resonate with me except as they were a warring faction that brought a lot of harm, unfortunately, to others and themselves, you know? But the re-evolution of that now, what were the gifts from that? We find the Lemurian crystals, right? That were seeded, that were programmed, you know, from Atlantis. There's artifacts, you know, like there were good people there. It's that neutrality. There's not this, it's not good, not bad. It just is. And I think that we're evolving beyond a place and space where, with us being heart based, there will be no more war. Like, I believe that in the age of Aquarius, we can accomplish that there is no more war because you don't see someone as different. You see them as an aspect of you because you are all connected in the quantum field and you love them as you love you, you know? And so that, you know, peace on earth, peace in the galaxy, peace and goodwill towards all beings is what I believe we're capable of doing in this transit of Pluto and Aquarius.
Well, the last thing I will say is that because Pluto's in Aquarius for the next 20 years, I can't imagine the children that are going to be born under this particular cycle. You know, that's going to act as a catalyst. You know, I mean, I could look at it esoterically and say, well, everybody that was in Atlantis and Lemuria and Mu, all coming back.
Yeah. To get it right.
Yeah,
To get it right.
exactly.
Because it is possible to. That's what I think we contracted for. You know, our highest versions of ourselves, and for everyone to be able to have that experience. And that's a very Aquarian thing, is for everybody to be able to access what it is that they need authentically just for them.
Well, a lot of Aquarians have tattoos. You know what I mean? So they just mark themselves. As I said earlier, that, you know, that I'm a little bit outside the lines, but don't judge me.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott, are you going to give us a little affirmation going on out before we thank Tom, but something for our listeners?
Sure.
Mr. Capricorn.
Yeah. Yeah, brief one. Deep breath. I am malleable as I move into this new age. My emotions and feelings are my highest form of intelligence, and I receive them as opportunities. I am grateful. I am capable. I am authentic. I am welcome in the new age. Thanks, Tom.
Namaste. Tom, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us and for sharing time and space with us. But Tom, before we get away, I have two things that I have to ask. I'm sorry, Scott. I'm going to be asking Tom the last questions. The first thing is, Tom, besides your sun being in Libra, where is your rising and your moon placement?
Um, oh boy. See, I never give out my birthday to anybody because
Do it, Tom. Then, because I felt like we never knew that about you.
oh, okay.
It's like a
I never give out my
camping.
birthday because I know what you can do with it. I got about a dozen birth dates out there on the web, is what it is. But I will say this because it's very interesting that my moon is at the exact degree of Gemini that yours is.
Oh, you have told me that. Yes.
Is that 18?
Okay.
18 degree?
23.
23 degree.
23. You don't have to give it this sauce.
That's
What?
Was there another question?
There is one more question,
Okay.
Tom. What are you feeling most empowered about in your life right now?
Oh, I think I'm getting these premature effects of Aquarius because it's like, it's interesting you've invited me onto the podcast here, but there's a part of me that basically says, it's time to, for myself even, that even though I'm busy, I think that people like you and I, these are more legitimate conversations. I'll put it that way, that deal with like sort of like inspiring, as well as like bringing out a greater circumference of, of our being, so to speak, is what it is. So it's like I'm just ready to press a button and start going, and start doing some more things on, online and YouTube and things of this particular nature.
Does that mean that you'll come back and visit with us again, Tom?
Or anytime.
Oh, deep bow, deep
Next time,
bow.
let's do it in the evening so I can have a glass of wine while we're talking.
He could do this in the evening. Noah adores you, and he will do that for us. And I just want to thank you. And I want to say, Tom, to you, while I have you, I would not have done this, Tom, if it were not for your guidance and your telling me about that 23 degrees that you and I share in common, that I was a messenger from Orion and that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly. You don't need to just talk to us. You need to talk to the greater whole. It's kind of simple to me. I mean, the moon deals with foods, but your conversation is food.
Humbled, Tom, humbled. Namaste. Merry everything. Peace, love, blessings. Thank y'all so much for listening. And we will see you and talk with you next time. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Then great. Thank you.